In the remote corners of Eastern Europe, hidden between thick forests and rolling hills, there existed a village that most maps failed to record, a village that even travelers who passed near it would later claim had vanished before they could fully comprehend its streets. They called it only in whispers, for its name, if spoken aloud, seemed to stir unease in the hearts of those who remembered. The villagers themselves referred to it in low, cautious tones as the place where shadows moved of their own accord, a land where light and darkness did not obey the usual rules of day and night. Tonight, I invite you to breathe deeply, close your eyes, and allow yourself to be guided into this hidden corner of history, where the ordinary turns strange, and every step might reveal something unseen. Feel the soft weight of the night settling around you, a gentle cloak that carries you forward into a story that has survived only in fragments, whispers, and the trembling pages of old diaries. The first written account of the village dates back to 1782, in the meticulous journals of a wandering historian named Gregor Vlast. Gregor had devoted his life to chronicling places of cultural peculiarity, regions where human experience intersected with the inexplicable. He had heard from travelers of a settlement where people avoided the outdoors at certain hours, not due to danger from beasts or bandits, but because of a more subtle, persistent phenomenon. Shadows did not behave as expected. They stretched, lingered, and occasionally moved with an intent of their own. Many dismissed the tales as folklore, but Gregor's curiosity was insatiable. He believed that to understand history, one must sometimes step beyond reason and into the realm of the impossible. After days of wandering through dense forests and uncharted paths, guided only by the occasional shepherd or a rough sketch etched into bark, Gregor finally arrived at the valley that cradled the village. The air changed almost immediately. It was thick, expectant, almost tangible, like the pause before a breath is held. From the small hill that overlooked the village, he could see wooden cottages with thatched roofs, smoke curling lazily from chimneys, and narrow cobblestone streets winding between the houses. Everything seemed normal. Yet, there was a profound stillness. No animals roamed freely, no children laughed, no voices carried across the fields. It was as though the village itself had paused, holding its breath. Gregor's first encounter with the peculiar behavior of the village occurred near the central well, where a young woman was drawing water. He greeted her, asking why the streets were deserted during this hour. She glanced at him with a steady and flinching gaze before whispering, "It is the hour when shadows grow curious." At first, he thought he had misheard, but then she pointed toward the ground. Gregor looked down and froze. Her shadow was not aligned with the sun. It leaned unnaturally to her left, twisting in a subtle, almost liquid motion. The air was calm, but the shadow trembled gently, like a reflection of something breathing beneath the surface. When she stepped back, the shadow lingered for a moment before snapping into alignment, but its brief independence left a chilling impression on him. This was the phenomenon the villagers called the wandering. As Gregor spent days in the village, he began to notice patterns. Certain hours of the day, the hour after dawn, the hours preceding sunset, and the first half of the night were reserved for solitude. The villagers remained indoors, not from fear, but from respect. During these times, shadows appeared to detach slightly from their owners, moving in ways that defied the natural angles of sunlight or moonlight. Trees and fences cast shadows that stretched in impossible directions. Windows reflected images that moved independently. Even objects left still seemed to project shadows that suggested hidden motion, subtle hints of a world layered just beyond perception. Gregor's nights were the most unnerving. Sitting in his rented cottage, he would peer through the thin curtains at the faintly illuminated streets, noticing the shadows of trees elongating far beyond their forms, twisting and bending like dark rivers over the cobblestones. He reported hearing whispers, faint and persistent, like hundreds of voices murmuring far below the earth. Villagers would chant softly, ancient incantations passed down over generations, murmured to maintain equilibrium with these restless silhouettes. According to the oldest accounts, the shadows had once been harmless, playful, even companions of those who respected them. But over time, events darkened the valley. Harsh winters, famine, disease, and the shadows grew restless, sometimes reaching out toward the living in ways that unsettled even the most seasoned villagers. One story, often repeated by the village elder, recounted the tragedy of a group of children playing near the old well. Their shadows, rather than mirroring their movements, slowly drifted toward the forest at the village's edge. The children, fascinated, chased them, laughing. Only one returned. The others, according to legend, had been separated from their own essence, claimed silently by the shadows. The lone child fell over subsequent weeks, his vitality draining as if his own form had been partially lost. Whether truth or myth, the tale served as a somber warning: never allow your shadow to wander freely. Gregor's observations extended beyond mere shadow behavior. He documented reflections in water that moved independently, silhouettes in mirrors that seemed aware, and the subtle sensation of being watched even when no one was near. Travelers passing through the village often fled in terror, yet the residents remained composed, accustomed to the subtle dance between light and darkness. On certain nights, the village itself seemed to breathe. Smoke from chimneys swirled against the wind in slow, deliberate patterns. Leaves and grass shifted slightly, as if touched by invisible fingers. Even the air carried a faint hum, like the resonance of voices in a distant chamber. One night, Gregor could not sleep. Drawn outside by an unrelenting curiosity, he wandered to the edge of the forest. The full moon illuminated the valley, but the shadows on the ground no longer aligned with the pale light. They stretched and twisted with intent, moving with a rhythm almost lifelike. He watched as his own shadow reached forward, extending several feet beyond his body, as though attempting to touch something just out of reach. Heart pounding, he stepped backward, yet the shadow remained, oscillating subtly, before snapping back beneath him like a taut string. In that moment, he realized the shadows were not merely visual anomalies. They were aware, patient, and possibly sentient. The elder approached him as dawn broke, her expression grave. "You have seen too much," she whispered. "The shadows have noticed your presence. You must leave." She recounted tales of travelers whose curiosity had bound them to the village permanently. Shadows had followed them beyond the valley, sometimes returning to claim them in the night. Some vanished entirely. Others were found, silent and changed, their shadows behaving erratically, a quiet reflection of the village's ancient power. When Gregor departed, he dared not look back. The valley slowly receded behind him, swallowed by forests and mist. Yet, even centuries later, accounts persisted of hikers and wanderers who stumbled near the supposed location of the village. Shadows that moved independently, footprints appearing without travelers, soft, whispering hums beneath the ground. The world, it seemed, had not entirely released the village or its secrets. The village's abandonment in the early 1800s left no residents, yet the stories endured, passed down through scattered diaries, cryptic letters, and local folklore. Scholars have debated the phenomenon, attributing it variously to optical illusions, psychological suggestion, or natural environmental factors. Yet none can fully account for the consistency and vividness of multiple accounts, the repeated observations by those unconnected by proximity or time. The shadows' movements were too deliberate, too patterned to dismiss entirely. Even today, when walking through certain valleys and forests in Eastern Europe, one might catch a flicker at the corner of the eye, a shape that moves independently, a whisper in the air that seems to respond to one's own heartbeat. Some say it is the lingering presence of the village, the remnants of a world where shadows were not bound, where light and dark had a language of their own, and where curiosity could be both a gift and a curse. As you listen to this story tonight, let the stillness wrap around you. Consider the unseen, the gentle sway of darkness that exists just beyond understanding. And perhaps, if you step outside on a moonlit night, you may notice your own shadow behaving slightly differently, hinting at a world you have never truly perceived. Before this story fades, I ask you, if you came across a place where shadows moved independently untethered by the light or the people who cast them, would you explore further to uncover their secrets? Or would you leave immediately to ensure your own safety? Think carefully and tell me in the comments below. What would you do if your shadow began to act on its own tonight?